See if we pick up any ice on the way. Hey, true believers, happy Wednesday, or whatever day you happen to be watching this on. This is LK. I'm with Dalton, the Authenticator. How are you doing, Dalton?
I am doing all right. How's everybody else doing?
Hey, so we'll see as people start filing in here, or if you're watching afterward, please leave.
Eglantine left us in charge of the ship again, and well, we're going to be beating down yet another bad comic.
Yep, and this is a bad comic, especially if you're fans of Warren Ellis, if you're fans of the old school Wildstorm universe, and you'll get to see why in a little bit. Definitely, if you're watching this after the fact, please leave your comments. Of course, like and subscribe. It helps boost the channel. We know that it gets pegged a little bit by the algorithm, so every little bit of support helps.
And remember also to share and comment, because the algorithm seems to be favoring sharing and commenting at the moment, so they're altering the algorithm. Pray they do not alter it any further. But in the meantime, we should help E to make a living, because he's got to be moving here pretty soon. He's going to have to deal with winters like the rest of us. Mwahaha.
Yeah. And so along with that, we are going to take a look here at Outsiders number 4, which came out this week. And so for those of you who haven't been kind of paying attention, Outsiders is a title that DC has used for many decades, book for team book. This most recent version is being helmed by Jackson Lanzing and Colin Kelly, two writers that I think do not rise above hack status. And as you see in their writing, they think that they're smarter than they are. And it's the old adage that you can't write characters that are smarter than you are. And it certainly comes through. What has really annoyed me about this book is they have basically taken Warren Ellis's Planetary book and basically hollowed it out, imprinted it onto one of the Fox sons there. He's there on the cover. So instead of being Batman, now he's the head of the Planetary organization. Yeah, Lucius Fox, thanks. He recruited Kate Kane in issue number 1. Of course, you have a drummer, because you always have a drummer who's able to sense things and know what's going on. So some of the fun that we've had in this book, in issue 2, we found out that the Bermuda Triangle version of DC was actually a graveyard of sea creatures that were killed by Aquaman. In issue 3.
Why?
Yeah. And so issue 3, they somehow stumble into Batman's psyche, and we get to see what Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly think of Batman, which isn't much. And
they keep trying to give the Bat family some kind of pseudo-mystical narrative magic significance, which didn't work when they tried it with Spider-Man, and it is not working here. Like, I'm all for throwing magic in as many places as you can justify throwing magic in, but street-level characters like Spider-Man or Batman don't need mystical gobbledygook to be important. And there's no reason why you need to be all postmodern meta, because they're so important to the medium or so important to the reader, so we have to make them that important in universe. No, you don't. Fuck off.
Yep. So here we go with issue 4. I'll give you a little hint for anybody who liked the early days of the Authority. This book might eventually tick you off. So here we go.
Oh, goody.
The title of it is London, One Night Only. We get an interesting ad here for issue 5 of Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong. I have not read this. I've heard it's been pretty good. I will say, taking a look at this, I like the idea of what they're doing with this ad, but I don't think it's drawn very well. The characters look very static. It just doesn't quite resonate with me the way that it's on the page.
I mean, we just got done reviewing Skeeters with Eglantine, and one of the reasons I love that book so much is because the aesthetic of that comic is very good at capturing that kind of full moon features, or maybe a little bit of hammer horror style, like cheap sci-fi. But obvious effort was put into it. It's not like it's just something you could have drawn up in a day or two. They actually had to put time, attention, and most of all, effort into replicating it, and replicating it well. They did.
Yeah. So here we go. Be forewarned, there is a lot of narration and internal dialogue in this.
Oh, goody.
So here we go. We start out on the first day of the new century at precisely 12 a.m. A baby girl was born to social worker Octavia DeVoe and her unemployed husband, James Cressy.
You could have just said midnight. That probably would have also added to a little bit of the mystical woo atmosphere you're obviously going for.
Well,
12 a.m. is less intuitive than just midnight.
Well, but precisely it's the new century 12 a.m. So
right,
2000 type stuff. Although technically it should be 2001, but
but at the stroke of midnight in the year 2000, that would have that's saying the exact same thing, but it's saying it more succinctly and more competently with regards to the whole mystical woo atmosphere you're obviously going for.
Yeah. So the two had only been on a few dates before Octavia got pregnant. They had used protection, even though James had previously undergone a vasectomy. The miracle, as the doctors had described it, felt like anything but that to Octavia and James. Their relationship would not last another year. So you see Octavia about to get her baby daughter. In the turbulent days leading to her birth, the world's government and news media had been singularly concerned with an impending computer bug that threatened to overturn the global economy at the stroke of midnight. So for you youngins out there, that was
Y2K.
Ask your parents about it.
Which speaking of the whole reason you made that joke just now, do the writers think that that's still a thing in common knowledge or common usage? Because that, I remember that because I was 5 or 6 years old when it happened, but it's been 20 or some odd years since then.
25 years basically. Yeah, so in the moments after she entered the world, relieved sighs filled the air in every nation. The crisis they imagined had failed to materialize. They were so relieved, but then again, they didn't know about Jenny. And you can see, energy sparks shooting from her eyes here.
Of course.
So we get
a little bit of Rosemary baby situation here.
We'll see. By age 12, Jennifer Cressy had developed severe symptoms of overwhelming anxiety, regularly undergoing intense panic attacks. It was like a rising disaster vibrating in her mind, a slow-motion car crash that filled her waking days with the dread of the next impact. Every early friendship ended in a fight. Every pop quiz.
So she's a Zoomer protagonist.
What was that?
I said, oh, so she's a Zoomer protagonist, because they literally cannot avoid writing a character with mental issues.
Yeah. The local fallout from these events was often catastrophic due to Jenny's undiagnosed metahuman status. Her mother, Octavia, all too aware of the horrors visited on children like Jenny, kept the family on the move to avoid forced separation by state actors. Jenny couldn't help but feel that every quiet new house on every quiet new street was her fault. On her 13th birthday, no one showed up to Jenny's party. She couldn't stop crying for 7 hours, even though she desperately wanted to. Meanwhile, 9,991 miles away, exactly 7 hours of flooding devastated communities around Jakarta, resulting in 322 deaths. So here we go. Now to happier times. The first time Jenny went to a house party, it changed her life. Every reckless spark in her chest found a welcome home, not as panic, but as joy. For once, she didn't need Dr. Chin's breathing exercises, or Dr. Kerner's 333 rule, or her mom's New Age mantras. She just needed to dance, and it felt
so
like...
So wait, in other words, this kid with severe mental issues and social issues isn't a shut-in or a wallflower like you would expect such a character to be, but she finds solace in reckless, useless hedonism.
Well, for this first time, it says the first time she went to the house party. So previously,
Right,
she
but
had been followed up.
I'm just like you like one. That's some very hydrophobic story chemistry going on there. Those two things don't really fit together. And two, this feels really self-inserty by the
Yeah,
writers.
yeah. Well, and the whole thing about why she went in the first place. But anyways, for every teenager at 220 South Hoover Street, it was the best night of their lives. 20 miles away on a small street in Dayton, the Waverly family for once stopped fighting and instead spent a Sunday dinner in laughter. The next morning, the New York Stock Exchange hit an all-time high. 2 days later, Jenny asked out Connor Cruz, a boy she met at the party. They dated for a week before she caught him kissing Jessica Poliso after biocount. Within hours, the worldwide financial system had collapsed.
Okay, so she's what, a reality bender or some such?
Or,
I I was
yeah,
thinking they were obviously going Antichrist for the most part because it was very
no,
Rosemary's Babies-ish, but
yeah,
so
not
reality
quite.
bender.
You'll see. Hey, Dark Admiral Marsh here. Welcome to our bad comic beatdown of Outsiders number 4. I hope you enjoy the pain. So here we go. Jenny saw the pattern even if no one else could, and so she did the only ethical thing she imagined a cursed person could do. She helped others, breathe deep, and live small so everyone else could live. And you see her like building a well or out somewhere.
So
She
she
learned how
actually
she
did
learned how
good
to slow the
things.
crash. She learned to be alone.
And somehow my SJW writing senses tell me that she's going to be told that that was a bad thing for her to do because it limited her God-given powers and blah blah blah.
Don't skip ahead. 2 nights ago, Jenny arrived in London. And there she is, looking all punked out, or at least what they think a punk looks like in 2024. But whatever.
Okay, stop. What? That's three times so far. I have noticed that these writers seem to think that it never stopped being 1994. Like, are they seriously that unaware that like 30 some odd years have occurred since the 90s? I know you want the credit of being Warren Ellis, or the credit of being Alan Moore, or the credit of being Jamie Delano, or the credit of being good Neil Gaiman back when he was good. But sweetheart, it's been 30 freaking years almost. It's not edgy anymore.
All right.
The thing that you grew up on that was so edgy when you did it, when you watched Doom Generation starring Rose McGowan, while getting high, that stuff is old news now. That stuff is the establishment now. You guys are the dominant paradigm now. I know you hate it. I know you really still want to be the rebels, but you just can't be anymore. God damn it.
Okay, settle down, Dalton. Settle down. It had been 6 years since she had had a real conversation with anyone about anything. 6 years of resting, heart rate exercises, and practicing detachment. She never felt more lonely or more tired of keeping it inside, so she decided to throw a party. The band sounded like a world-ending storm. They were going to be huge. Jenny always had a sixth sense about that kind of thing. She hadn't smiled like this in months, maybe years. In her heart, she knew that out there in the wide corners of the world, her joy was lifting spirits, starting festivals, bringing beauty. She even let herself have a drink, which she hadn't done since Dayton. And that's how she met Kells. Dun, dun, dun.
Okay,
Surprise!
just so we're clear, this person with severe anxiety disorders, mind you, this is established, finds solace not in proper medication or even through actual altruism, because we see her trying to limit herself, and that's bad because social justice morality, but in reckless hedonism. And moreover, she knows that whenever she's sad, bad things happen to the world, and whenever she's happy, good things happen to the world. So surely the most ethical thing she could do is make sure she's as happy as possible, as often as possible. And yet, she spends all this time angsting and moping because she also needs to be a punk rock protagonist because this is still 1992 for some reason.
Yeah. Well, or more importantly, just the idea of not learning how to develop a thick skin, to not take things seriously, to not
Yeah, she didn't go the personal growth route. She didn't go the proper medication or um or medical necessities route. She went the I'm neurodivergent, so I'm gonna bury it all in parties and hedonism and derp. And again, this would have been really edgy if it were still 1990 freaking 2, but alas, it is now 2024, and this is the equivalent of how do you do, fellow Zoomer kids?
Yeah, well, and again, nothing says like 2024 like wearing a 1990s era Union Jack tank top. But let's move on. So there they are taking pictures in front of the Lions at Trafalgar Square, I think it is. And then it was electric. And there they are holding hands, and of course they kiss. The next day was the best day of the century. Quiet skies, steady markets, 27 artists around the world began or finally finished their masterpieces. Only 2 deaths, both noted war criminals. 6 ceasefires took effect. Children were born laughing. The world
Okay, so
lived
literally, she should be obligated to basically be high on dopamine all the time because that's the only ethical way for her to exist at this point.
Yeah. Jenny was in love. Now, understand, all of this happened in the space of 24 hours, basically. Because they're wearing the same clothes. It looks like the best day, the next day. So 24 hours. She's in love. I'm just looking. Oh, Weave, Gotham, UK. Okay. Let's see if that band said anything. So it wasn't until the sun went down that Kells texted back. Thanks, but no thanks, love. Good time, though. 5 stars. Jenny couldn't believe she had been so stupid. She couldn't believe she had let herself hope. Notice how it's raining now. And for the first time in years, she felt the disaster inside her mind. Spinning, hurtling, toppling, the rush, the fall, and then the explosion.
Okay, see, this is the problem with the character you've set up. This is a, and I'm going to use the modern term, a neurodivergent character whose mood fluctuation literally affects the laws of probability as far as we can tell. So either she should be morally obligated to keep herself as happy as possible for as long as possible because otherwise disaster, or, and I don't want to go here, but at this point it would be more ethical of her to unalive herself and leave the fate of the world up to random chance again than for it literally to fluctuate based on her mental health, because as we've seen, her definition of mental health is not get actual mental health or work on herself in any meaningful way. Her definition of mental health is the modern Zoomer definition of mental health, which is, oh, you're neurodivergent and have crippling anxiety disorder, just bury it in drugs and hedonism and sex and rock and roll and derp.
Yeah. Well, as Dark Admiral says, so in that universe, George R. Martin finished A Dream of Spring. Well, maybe. I'm not sure even the whims of the universe can make that happen.
The laws of probability would just break down at that point, I think.
Yeah. So here we are back at Outsiders headquarters in Metropolis. This is the drummer character. She says, overnight there were riots in Stockholm, Central City, Buenos Aires, Hong Kong, Nairobi, Los Angeles, Mumbai, and Sydney. A 6.4 earthquake leveled the Chilean coastline. Oh, and there's been a 247% spike in global suicide rates. This is her. Trust me. We intervene now, or we sign up for a world that shifts on the whims of a 20-something drifter. And
okay,
Kate,
Steve, this is the problem. You've set up her as the protagonist, but I am immediately on the side of whoever is questioning this logic, because it does make no sense to put the entire fate of the world on the whims of a person who is quote-unquote neurodivergent and only happy when she's engaged in sex, drugs, rock and roll, and etc.
Yeah. Now, see, I will say, though, that if you have been reading the prior issues, that we've seen that the drummer here does have some kind of agenda. We don't know if she's necessarily working with a different group of people or if it's her own thing, but she's got her own agenda, but we don't know what it is yet. So anyways, Kate says, You know, when I came on this strong about Neil, you accused me of having a vendetta. That was supposition. This is fact, says you. Says the fabric of history coming in over the frequency like a banshee. I could be wrong, but it'd be a first. Your observation team indicate any combat training? And of course, Lucius says, Kate, she's just a girl. And Kate replies, sounds like a time bomb to me. I know this organization doesn't generally go after hostile threats, but her power needs to be neutralized. And we're the only ones who even know it exists. Looks like you two get to be superheroes for once. Ha ha ha. Now let's save this strange world of ours, shall we? And again, this piece right here, again, if you're a planetary fan, if you're a fan of the Authority back in the Warren Ellis days, this kind of should piss you off a little bit because they used to refer to it as like the strange world. So
again, this would have worked back in the 90s when people were focused on writing competently, but it's not the freaking 90s anymore, now is it?
Yeah. So here we go. Jenny learned a technique when she was young. It helped sometimes. It even helped now when the seas in her blood began to boil. Step 1, name 3 things you can see. Of course, she says brick walls, black cat, red light. Her runaway heart kept racing. Drummer, we have visual. So she kept going. Step 2, name 3 things you can hear. We hear that she's intercepting or can hear the radio frequencies. Drummer, this is field team. We have visual confirmation. Preparing for neutralization. That didn't help either. What the blank? And of course, again, this is something else you're going to see is that they blank out all the cuss words, which whatever. They can't make up their mind.
Because we're so edgy, but at the same time, we won't ever actually own up to the edge we're trying to court like it's 1990 freaking 4.
Yeah. And of course, Kate says, well, this is a complication. And we see, so Jenny did step 3, move 3 parts of your body. First, her eyes, next, her feet, and finally, her weaponized anxiety. Kaboom, as you see it kind of like shoots out and kind of like takes out part of the building that those two were sitting on top. So we didn't know it could
so she
manifest.
So she knows her anxiety is a literal goddamn weapon.
Yeah.
I don't want to be an asshole here, but this is the same as the Wanda problem. You can claim, it's misogynistic to expect this character to control her powers, blah blah. But here's the thing: 1, especially in the DC universe, the Spectre does this kind of thing all the time, and we don't cut him any slack because he's allegedly male. And 2, if your emotional whims have the power to warp reality beyond recognition, then you do actually have a moral responsibility to fucking control that shit.
Yep. So here we go. And hey, ahoy, Rhaegar. Glad you're able to join us for this journey into pain and frustration. School buses have been a daily gauntlet for Jenny during her childhood, and the aversion had stuck. She preferred to walk, more places to run when things got out of hand. Unless, of course, so you see that she's run down into the underground. She goes, panic. She wanted them to get out of hand. And a couple strangers, do you feel that? I think, oh my God, I need to get out of here. We all do. So she obviously understands that if she focuses, she can basically, if she's panicking, she can inflict that emotion on.
Force it onto the world.
Other people around her. And of course, Lucius here, being bright that he is, he's go, damn it, she's using her ability. We're losing her. And Kate goes, not that easily, because of course she's awesome at all things.
Because hyper-competent female protagonist in current year.
Yep. Come on. And she's basically running down the tunnel here. Kate's going, come on. Wow, great dialogue there. Kate gets down, subway train passes by, and realizes that she's lost her, and she goes, well, blank. You can
also, that was a whole page of panels. You probably could have cut that number of panels down by 1/3, and it would have been like 3 times as economical and still gotten the same message across.
You could have gotten rid of the word bubbles, honestly. Anyways, here we see Jenny kicking open a door, which, okay. And then, hey there, kid. You look like someone who should have a seat. And here's the drummer. Sorry, ma'am. Slowing down is a bad option at the moment. Ma'am, oh, F me. Look, take it from an apparently very old woman. First rule of running away, stand the blank still. The rabbit that runs is the one that gets chased. And of course, Jenny, being her off-putting self, says, "What makes you think I'm running?" And the drummer just kind of looks at her in the rain. And Jenny sits down and says, "I suppose it doesn't hurt to catch my breath." Hey, AWOL thoughts? Yes, this actually came out this week. So, yeah. Join us for this awful book. So we see drummer here going, "Superheroes on your tail?" Jenny replies, "A bat person, I think. Didn't know he operated in the UK." And drummer responds, "He's a franchise now." Of course, she knows exactly who it is, but it's all gross. Honestly agree. And we learn a little bit more maybe about the drummer here. "I've always hated that term superhero. Doing the right thing despite the odds, helping the helpless. Shoot, maybe making the world just a little better than you found it. That shouldn't require you to be super. It should be the absolute minimum expectation for living on this terrible marble."
Okay, but my dear, and this is going to be the thing that is going to drive me absolutely up the freaking wall about your character. With great power comes great responsibility, i.e. those with more power to affect the world are more accountable with how they use it. Which would be a crucial lesson for you to learn, but I have a strong suspicion you're not going to learn it because we're operating by modern-day protagonist rules, and therefore the very notion that you need to learn anything is haram now.
Well, in modern day ideology, I mean, I'll just quickly say, I mean, these are the classic words of any progressive leftist that you hear that thinks they're being smart or intelligent by saying this exact kind of stuff. And it's like, well, it doesn't work that way. And I mean, yeah, we all should strive for that, but it doesn't happen. I mean, that's
and those with more power are more accountable with how they use it, or should be in theory.
Yeah. So anyways, Jenny says here, "Right, slap on a cape and suddenly you're the moral authority." And drummer replies, "And the authority can get blanked." Amen. Man, can't tell you how much that makes me smile to hear you say that. The times may change, but Jenny, you're always my favorite. And she goes, "Excuse me?" And get ready. If you're an authority fan, get ready to smile and be so happy.
I'm bracing myself. I'm going to hate you in a minute, I think.
Yep. "Do you? Do you know me?" And drummer says, "I do, after a fashion. I know what you can do, and I know why you can do it. Question is, do you want to know what I know?" And Jenny says, "More than anything." And drummer says, "At the turn of every century, when that clock strikes midnight, the powers of the world, the real powers, not this flights and tights nonsense, well, they get born. Living embodiments of the century to come. We call them century babies. And there's one in particular, that's you. We call the spirit of the century. The last one, she was a friend sometimes. Her name was Jenny Sparks, and she was unstoppable. Before her, Jenny Steam, Jenny Discovery, Jenny Crusade. We even had a Jenny Quantum once, but not anymore, I guess. Each of them was plugged directly into the weft of the world."
Okay, I can buy at least some of that, but here's the thing. Even the Endless, when for example Dream of the Endless was put on lockdown for the previous century, that only created the encephalitis lethargica epidemic. So just how powerful are these century babies, and why is it that we've only now just heard of them?
Well, we haven't. So this is where I talk about the authority, because the lead character and the initial leader, if I'm getting all my timelines right, because it's been a long time since I've read it, but Jenny Sparks was one of the most popular characters from the authority, and she had basically like electrical powers.
Yeah, I remember her. Yeah.
She was referred to as a sentry, and kind of, as it says, was kind of like plugged into the world. So this is what Lanzing and Kelly and Extension DC and F. Jim Lee and the rest of them, they're basically being allowed to strip mine, as far as I'm concerned, the good Wildstorm stuff here for Lanzing and Kelly's amusement.
And what is this current Jenny's last name? Because obviously it's going to be indicative of shit.
Yeah, we'll find out. So she says, I'm not that. I'm a mess." And of course, drummer goes, "Trust me, kid, that you all have in common, but blank, kid. You did get dealt a bad hand, at least to start. She says, you're saying it's my fault? Every single day of my life is another disaster, and I'm just supposed to what? Live through it? No, Jenny, you're supposed to control it. Dun, dun, dun.
Which leads us back to the thing that if she knows she has this power, she should basically be doping herself up to make herself as happy as possible all the time, or more likely just herself so that probability can go at a normal pace without any meddling.
But, in classic Zoomer style, instead of taking a step back and going, wow, control it, she goes, control? You want to see control, as she starts throwing some stuff here at the drummer. Right now, I can feel the anxiety of the effing weather. It's pretty sure I'm feeling like a storm. And drummer, she goes, my anger, it's going to every cat within a 6-block radius. I love cats, but mine will kill you if I even let myself get even a little more ticked off. And you can see the cats starting to gather around here. And she goes, oh, and since my confusion, since you started throwing proper nouns at me, making it sound like you're from some other planet, well, I'm sending it to a late-night drunken parade about half a mile from here. They're artists. They can handle it, unlike every driver on Tower Bridge.
Jenny, you do realize that if you know you have this power and that you can control it, and you don't choose to make the world a better place with it, that makes you a villain and someone who is better off dead than alive. I'm sorry, but
again,
them's
just
the rules.
like in progressive Zoomer ideology, we're not supposed to see her as a villain. Instead, it's poor put upon Jenny. She's
because
trying
control
so hard.
is oppression, blah blah. Yes, I know.
Yeah. So I've been an emotional Chernobyl since the day I was born, but I do not need you to tell me how to live. My name is Jenny Crisis. I'm going to leave this century better than I found it. And you can blank the blank off. And of course,
I hate to burst this particular bubble, but the word crisis has a very particular meaning and implies that you will do no such thing, and someone really should have that conversation with you right about now. But they won't, because this is modern day writing, I'm sure.
Yeah. And of course, here we go. Batwoman and Lucius Fox up here, I refuse to call him any kind of Batman, say, drummer, say the word. They've caught up. As it looks like a cat is either going for a hug or trying to attack her. I'm not quite sure. Drummer goes, no, it's okay. Stand down. And, Kate being her indignant self, just god-awful personality that Lanzing and Kelly have written her with. Stand down. She's literally sparking with unstable energy. And Lucius says, and we're dressed like bats. If she has it under control, she has it under control. And drummer says, and she does. Look at her. Don't you see it? She's a good person of supernatural providence, trying to figure out how to live better than the people who came before her. Remind you of anyone? She's not a threat.
Well,
She's just an outsider.
If you insist on making me remember the 90s as well as I remember the 90s, this reminds me of Rose Walker from the Sandman series, specifically the Dollhouse storyline, wherein she basically has to either die or give up the powers of being, in that context, a nexus, because if not, she has the potential to destroy all of reality. And since we're very obviously aping everything that was allegedly good about the 90s, that probably would be a sensible solution to this issue of either having her die or no longer be a factor because the world can't handle having multiple nexuses at once, or two, have her bestow that power on someone else because usually this is the kind of power that they can control.
Yeah. So here we go. Oh no, you are perfect. Hey, could we talk a sec, Jenny? And Jenny replies in the typical Zoomer fashion, that's Ms. Spirit of the Century to you. Sorry, I'm not joining your weird club or corporation or whatever. And he says, would you be down to swap numbers, emails? Maybe we could help each other down the line. Honestly, man, you want to help? Come be nice to these cats. They just went through a whole thing. Fucking Lansing and Kelly. So Kate here, crossed arms, looking indignant. So, What happened to let's save the world from the lady who accused me of being an Ahab? Is that, oh, oh God, F these guys. You want to know what that stands for?
Please tell me, and then give me a second to scream into the ether again.
Now, you're familiar with ACAB, right? That
Yes, I am aware.
all the BLM and other progressive protesters are saying.
Mm-hmm.
Take out the
All
word
heroes.
but
Oh
heroes.
God. Fucking
Thank
hell.
you, Lanzing and Kelly, you freaking hacks. So drummer says, put simply, my cryptoperian colleague. Oh, again, trying to talk smart when they are absolutely two of the stupidest idiots on the planet. She got there first. So while I absolutely hate to admit it, I was wrong. And Kate here smugly looking, wow. And I didn't even have to viciously nag you for you to admit it. Oh God, the dialogue is horrible.
Because literally the only thing that these writers know is like Bruce V style PUAs hitting on them in bars, apparently.
Yeah. So and drummer says, what can I say, Kate? There's a first time for everything. And here we get the lovely end of book splash page, and you can see the mental illness haircut here. We can see the pastel colors. So of course this is all just, a poster for GLAAD, because of course that's what Lanzing and Kelly are as well. So 21st century baby, because of course 21st century means being gay or on the spectrum. And this is just absolutely disgusting.
And by the way, no, I don't feel represented by this. I feel insulted by this. If you want me to feel represented by gay characters, write gay characters A, with an actual romance subplot to speak of, or B, with personalities and characteristics that don't make me want to violently burn things.
Yeah, and then we see at the end here the drummer off on her own, writing in her little journal. And that is our story. Thank you for nothing, Jackson Lanzing, Colin Kelly, Robert Carey. The art's not bad. What I will say is it reminds me of, again, going back to Planetary, this reminds me of knockoff John Cassaday and the art that we would see in Planetary. And of course, thanks for nothing, James Reed, who's an assistant editor, and Jessica Burby, who is the editor. And good riddance, Ben Abernathy, who's the group editor. Unfortunately, DC decided to replace him with Katie Kubert. So don't expect the Bat books to get better at all. And there is Outsiders number 4. Let me see if there's any kind of little, hey, coming up in Outsiders number 5. Nope. That's all we got.
And by the way, since you both are clearly so interested in being the modern day versions of Daria, you might want to familiarize yourself with what happened when Daria was asked what the word edgy was, and she basically responded, it's corporations trying to pander to a youth that they don't have any interest in either understanding or actually engaging with. Because that, ironically, you think you're being the, speaks truth to power Daria type character, but all you're managing to do is evoke Daria's definition of edgy, my dears. Because you apparently missed the fact that it's been 20 freaking years since the 90s, and that the social justice movement is now the powers that be. It's not the Tradcons anymore, it's definitely you. And in theory, that would mean that you would have to actually take some responsibility for having that power. But instead of taking responsibility for having that power, you're just going to keep pretending like you're still the poor put upon rebels, all the while pelting academic jargon from the top of every ivory tower in existence.
Yeah. So let's take a few comments here. Let's see. AWOL says, holy crap, so this is a really bad version of Planetary. Oh, yes, it is. It is very much. Yeah, the Gaul, wow, so edgy, so moving. Yeah, that sucks. The word crisis has lost all meaning. Rhaegar says, so Jenny is an acrimonious midwit. This
Correct.
is an SJW, 100%.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, oh, thought you were going to say something, or Dalton.
No, go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean this book just boils me. Has my blood, boiling in a sense, because as I say, I was a huge Warren Ellis fan. I loved Planetary. I thought it was one of the best science fiction pieces. The way that Ellis blended genres, the way that he found creative uses for different types of characters and using and mixing tropes. Um, his evil Fantastic Four was awesome in that book, and then how he came up, then how Elijah Snow, defeated him, was great. And that's kind of the other thing that just annoys me too, is that this is basically just completely crapped on Elijah Snow, Janika.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you because the style and content of comics that they're trying desperately to ape here is my exact era of comics. Like, I love the 80s and 90s. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I would normally like, especially with all the mystical nonsense going on in it. But the fact that they still think that this is fresh and new and edgy and hasn't been done 1,000 times in 1,000 more interesting and more coherent ways than this is just insulting everything I love about comics, and it's pissing me off. It's ripping off Dollhouse from the Sandman. It's ripping off Books of Magic. It's ripping off the Golden Boy arc of Constantine. It like pick something that I love that is like one of my top 5 favorite comics ever, and it's ripping it off, and it's doing it shittily because rather than actually being meaningfully edgy in the modern context, they still act like it's still the freaking 90s, and therefore punk and everything is just as relevant today as it ever was back then. And it's like, no.
Yeah. So in the kind of couple minutes we have left here, because we don't want to go too long on this, I'll tell you, save your money on this. Go find issues of Planetary in the bargain bins, because most of them are there, or pick up a trade for it. Excuse me. Go read early issues of Authority. There's also a great mini series. Excuse me. I think it was called The Adventures of Jenny Sparks. Those will do you a world of good. And I'll just finish off. I'll second with you. You can also tell from this. Again, one of the things that I loved about Warren Ellis books is he did the research. He thoroughly researched ideas and concepts that he used in his books, and it came through.
Well, because he actually cares about philosophy and not just politics.
Yeah. Jackson, Lanzing, and Colin Kelly do none of that. And if they did it poorly and very much at the surface level. And it shines through in this book. It shined through in the last issue with the Batman psyche and all of that.
While we're making recommendations, if you want something like this but done 1,000 times better, go read the second trade paperback of the Sandman, which is called Dollhouse. Go read the 90s version of Uncle Sam, because they did a really good version of Uncle Sam, and I think it was the 90s, it might have been the 80s, that plays with this kind of personification of forces of nature and concepts thing really, really much better than this. Yeah, read Planetary, read Animal Man from Grant Morrison. He does this kind of meta stuff much better than this tripe could ever hope to. There's just so many better books that did this so much better and played around with these kind of concepts so much better. Like anything from the 90s that came out of Vertigo, probably you could be reading that stuff for years and never have to come back to this nonsense, and you'd still be getting more trippy, mystical, punk-infused weirdness that was actually appropriate for the time and sculpted with something resembling care for the in-universe logic and characters, not just using the characters and world as a soapbox for whatever thought happened to be running through the writer's head at the moment.
Yep. So we're gonna wrap it up for tonight. Thanks everybody that joined us for our bad comic beatdown of Outsiders number 4. I hope people who watch it later on enjoy this and learn to stay away from the current Outsiders book and stay away from pretty much anything that Lanzing and Kelly write. Dalton, where can folks find you?
I am Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator. My YouTube channel is called The Authenticator. I don't often, or as often as I would like, post there. I do also do 2 podcasts every week. One of them is called The Duality of Man, that I do every Wednesday at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, and that's on men's rights and men's issues, and I share that podcast with Mr. E2099. And I also do a kind of geek news and or politics roundup every Sunday at 8 o'clock with the Brainstorm of Pop Culture. That's called Podcast of the Storm. You can find me over there. I also am here every Tuesday night or every other Tuesday night now at 10:30 doing the Marvel RPG with Maranya and several other regulars of this channel. So if you feel like more of my weirdness is up your street, then you can find me at all those places.
That's great. All right. Well, you can find me here hanging out every now and then on England Hain Stream. We definitely invite everybody every Friday night. We have a budget comic auction here. We have good times, great laughs. We talk about comics. We talk about pop culture and anything else that comes up in the chat. So please join us there. That usually kicks off around, I believe, 8 o'clock Eastern. And so that'll do it for our bad comic beatdown here. This is LK. Thanks again, Dalton, for joining us. And we'll catch everybody else down the line. Thank you much.
Cheers, guys.